I thought I just lost a few thousand. It turned out to be $84,000, and a new credit line opened in my name 8 months ago. When I finally played the recording from the kitchen smart speaker, my mother didn't break down. She just smiled and asked me if I dared to play the second track. My name is Chloe Mitchell. I'm 29 years old, and I'm a data engineer at Northline Arches here in Denver. My entire career is built on finding truth in noise. I clean raw data. I find the patterns. I build the models that predict the future. I am logical. I am methodical. I am in control. At least I was until tonight. It was late, nearly 11:30. I was driving home from the office after a brutal 14-hour push. We were deploying a new enterprise system, and the database integration had failed 3 times. My eyes burned from staring at code. The Denver skyline was sharp and cold, a precise collection of lights, but all I felt was the thrum of exhaustion in my bones. I just wanted to get inside, lock the door, and disconnect. I parked in my assigned spot, grabbing my laptop bag. As I walked into the condo, the air felt wrong, stale. My sister Megan's expensive running shoes, the ones I'd paid for, were kicked carelessly in the entryway, mixed with 3 other pairs of hers. She was 34, living in my second bedroom, and treated the entire apartment like her personal closet. I sighed, nudging them aside with my foot. I didn't have the energy to be annoyed. Not yet. I dropped my keys in the ceramic bowl by the door, the one I bought in Santa Fe. My routine is automatic, especially when I'm this tired. Bag on the chair, coat on the hook, phone plugged in on the kitchen counter. I opened the fridge, grabbed a bottle of water, and leaned against the granite. Before bed, I always do a quick check. Work email, personal email, and a 30-second glance at my bank accounts. One is my checking for daily life, the other is my fortress. I opened the app for my high-yield savings account, the one I call the emergency fund. The balance loaded, my breath hitched. The number displayed was $912. I stared at the screen. This was wrong. It was a glitch, a caching error from the deployment I just left. I closed the app. I forced quit it. I reopened it. The little circle spun. $912. My heart didn't drop. It seized. It felt like a cold hand had reached through my ribs and squeezed. I frantically scrolled down the transaction history. A withdrawal pending $25,000. A second withdrawal pending $30,000. A third pending $29,500. $84,500. Gone. Wiped out. 3 massive transfers all dated today. I couldn't breathe. That fund was my religion. I started it the day after I got the settlement from the car accident last year. A truck had run a red light, shattered my left leg, and put me out of work for 6 weeks. The physical therapy was grueling, but the financial terror was worse. Realizing that 3 paychecks separated me from eviction, that fund was my vow. Never again. It was untouchable. It was only for catastrophe. It was my guarantee that I would never ever be helpless like that again. My phone still in my hand vibrated. A new text message. The name on the screen, Karen Shaw. My mother. I opened it. My vision was swimming. The letters blurring. I used that money. Call it a reward for 29 years of raising you. A reward. The word echoed in the silence of the apartment. A reward. Like a bonus for a job well done. Like I was a stock that had finally matured and she was cashing out. The coldness of it, the absolute clinical entitlement, was worse than the theft itself. She didn't apologize. She didn't explain it as an emergency. She claimed it. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely type. I opened the family group chat. Megan was in it. My father, Robert, was in it. Mom just took $84,000 from my emergency fund. All of it. The reply from Megan was instantaneous. It wasn't words, it was a sticker. A cartoon cat laughing, wiping away animated tears. My blood ran cold. She knew. She was in on it. I abandoned the chat and called my father. He's 62. A man who believes "don't rock the boat" is a complete life philosophy. He picked up on the third ring, his voice thick with sleep. "Chloe, what's wrong? It's past midnight." "Dad, Mom took all my money, the emergency fund. She took everything. $84,500. She sent me a text. She said it was a reward." There was a long, heavy sigh on the other end. The sound of rustling sheets. "Oh, Chloe, please don't start this tonight. You know how your mother gets. Don't make a big deal out of it." "Not a big deal." My voice cracked, and I hated myself for the weakness. That was my entire life savings. That was my safety net, the one I built after the accident. "Well, money in the family is shared money, isn't it?" he said, his voice taking on that familiar placating tone. "It's not like it's gone. It's just in the family. We're a family. It all works out in the end. Don't upset your mother. She's been stressed." He hung up. Shared money. The words tasted like ash. I texted Karen directly, my thumbs jabbing the screen. "I need a detailed statement of where every cent of my $84,500 went immediately." Her reply came back in under a minute. "You wouldn't understand. You'll understand when you become a mother." I threw the phone onto the sofa. It bounced off a cushion, screen down. I stood in the middle of my living room, the silence suffocating. This wasn't a sudden crisis. This was a hostile takeover. And the worst part, the sick, sinking feeling in my gut. It was recognition. This wasn't the first time. It was just the biggest time. My mind flashed back through years of transactions. The $5,000 I loaned Megan 2 years ago to launch her artisanal soap and candle business. Shaw Craft Works, a business that never sold a single bar, but somehow had persistent supply costs. The constant low-level drain, me picking up the grocery bills, me paying the utilities for this condo, even though Megan lived here, me covering the surprise property tax shortfall for my parents' house last fall. I thought of the Neiman Marcus coat Karen had cried over last Christmas. How she'd gone on and on about how her friend had one, and how she'd never had anything truly nice. I'd bought it. $3,200. I'd put it on my credit card, telling myself her happiness was worth it. All those emergencies, all those guilt trips, all those times my father called asking me to just smooth things over with a small transfer. I wasn't their daughter. I was their high-yield savings account. I was the family's designated adult, their ATM, their safety net, and they had just cut the cord. The engineer inside my brain, the part that had been stunned into silence, suddenly switched on. The grief and panic receded, replaced by a cold, sharp focus. "Shared money," my father had said. I walked back to the kitchen, picked up my phone, and opened my checking account app. The small joint account I shared with Karen. The one I hadn't scrutinized in months. The one I automatically transferred money into. The one supposed to be used exclusively for the gas, electric, and water bills for my parents' house. A gesture of goodwill. I opened the transaction history. I scrolled past the utility payments, and there it was, a transfer. Shaw Craft Works LLC Memo Consulting Services $5,000. Another Shaw Craft Works LLC memo. Strategic Planning $4,000. Another. And another. My blood froze. They had been siphoning money from the utility account for months, using my goodwill money to fund Megan's fantasy. This wasn't just Karen acting on impulse. This was coordinated. This was a conspiracy. Megan, Karen, and my father, the silent enabler. The shaking stopped completely. The hot tears pressing behind my eyes evaporated. I would not be the hysterical daughter. I would not drive to their house and scream. That is what they expected. They wanted me to be emotional. They wanted me to cry and yell so they could call me ungrateful and dramatic and cold. They wanted to turn this into a fight about feelings. I would not. This was no longer a family dispute. This was a data problem. I walked to my home office. I took out a fresh legal pad and a pen. I sat down at my terminal. I would not confront them. Not yet. I would document everything. I began downloading every bank statement, PDF, CSV. I screenshotted the text messages from Karen, the laughing sticker from Megan. I noted the time of my father's call. My objective was no longer to make them love me. My objective was to regain control of my assets. I would find every piece of evidence. I would trace every dollar, and I would construct a case so ironclad that the ungrateful daughter narrative would be the first thing to shatter. The game was on. I didn't sleep. Sleep was a luxury I could no longer afford. Adrenaline, sharp and cold, was my fuel. My condo, once my sanctuary, had transformed. It was no longer a home. It was a command center. The sun hadn't risen yet. I spent the dark, quiet hours in a state of methodical, controlled fury. I was not a daughter grieving a betrayal. I was a data engineer analyzing a catastrophic system failure. I began where I always begin, with the raw data. I accessed the bank portals. I downloaded everything. 18 months of statements from my primary checking. 3 years from the joint utility account I stupidly shared with my mother. The complete agonizing history of the emergency fund, from its first deposit to its final violation. I pulled the CSV files, the PDFs. I opened a new encrypted spreadsheet, columns, date, time, amount to, from, memo. I started with a joint account, the one supposedly for my parents' gas and water bills. The consulting transfers to Shaw Craftworks LLC stood out like errors in clean code. $27,000 siphoned, not stolen, siphoned over 9 agonizingly long months. The memos were a parody of corporate legitimacy, strategic planning fee, market research, Q3 advisory services. My sister Megan couldn't strategically plan her way out of a paper bag, but it was the timestamp that made my skin crawl. I sorted the transfers. Friday, 11:58 p.m. Friday, 11:59 p.m. Friday, 11:58 p.m. Always minutes before midnight. Right before the weekly statement period cut off. This wasn't Karen's sloppy impulsivity. This was Megan. This was calculated. This was designed to bury the transactions at the bottom of a summary, to make them look like old news, hoping I'd never scroll that far down on a Saturday morning. They had drained the utility account. But how did they breach the fortress? How did they get into the $84,000 emergency fund? That account was locked down. It had multi-factor authentication, my phone, my password. They couldn't have. My eyes scanned the quiet kitchen, landing on the little gray cylinder on the counter, the smart speaker, the one that played music, set timers, and answered questions about the weather. I had set one up for my parents, too, linking them both to my primary account for convenience. My fingers flew across my phone screen. Settings, privacy, request, full voice history. The download took 20 minutes. I scrolled through endless requests to play music, check traffic, and set alarms. And then I found it. 3 weeks ago, a voice command. It wasn't my voice. Hey device, read my text messages. It was Karen, my mother. There was a pause, then the speaker's sterile automated voice. New message from Capital Reserve Bank. Your one-time verification code is 933018. A cold sweat broke out on my neck. She had been in my house. She had come into my kitchen, stood right where I was standing, and used my own technology to read my private security codes. The code was one piece of the puzzle. They still needed my password, or they just needed to reset it. I went to my email inbox. I searched the bank's name. I scrolled past the marketing spam, the monthly statements there. 2 months ago, an email I had completely missed buried in a weekend avalanche of updates. The timestamp, 2:03 a.m. The subject confirmation of new device login. I hadn't been logging in at 2 inches the morning. I was asleep. I opened the email details. A new login occurred from a device we haven't seen before. It listed the browser, the operating system, and the IP address. I copied the IP. I ran a trace route. It wasn't a hacker in Romania. It wasn't a botnet in China. The IP resolved to a Comcast cable residential address in Arvada. my parents' house. They had guessed my security questions, my first pet's name, the street I grew up on, my high school mascot. Answers. Karen knew better than I did. They logged in from their house at 2:00 the morning. Then Karen came to my condo later to use my speaker to bypass the two-factor authentication. This wasn't a lapse in judgment. This was a multi-stage coordinated attack. But the $84,000 withdrawals were too large for a simple online transfer. The app history listed them as telephone withdrawal authorizations. That meant they had called and the bank wouldn't transfer that kind of money without documentation. I navigated to the app's document center and I found it. A scanned PDF, a letter of authorization to permit large sum withdrawals via telephone. It was my name, Chloe Mitchell. It looked like my signature almost. I write quickly. My signature is sharp, angular, confident. This was slow. The pressure of the pen was too even. The ink was too thick, as if someone had pressed down with all their might. It looked like someone had practiced, like they had traced my signature from another document and then bore down hard to make it look real. It was a forgery and a clumsy one. If you knew what you were looking for, I felt like I was going to be sick. A forged signature, mail theft. What else? I walked back to the kitchen, to the junk drawer, the one where old menus, rubber bands, and batteries went to die. I pulled it open, digging past takeout pamphlets and loose change there, shoved in the back, a ripped-open envelope from Capital Reserve Bank. My heart hammered. It wasn't a statement. It was a welcome packet. Your new supplementary card and PIN are enclosed. The letterhead read. I never requested a supplementary card. I tore the rest of the envelope open. The plastic card was gone, punched out of its paper holder. The little adhesive slip, where the PIN was attached, also gone. This was Megan. She lived here. She checked the mail. She had intercepted this, activated the card, and hidden the evidence. My mind was racing. Where did the money go? The $27,000 from the utility account went to Megan's shell company. The $84,000 from the emergency fund. I logged into my credit card account, the one I didn't share with anyone. A pending charge from Neon and Company, $3,280. Memo, cashmere coat, silk scarf. I opened Facebook. I went to Karen's profile. She was locked down, but her friends were not. I clicked on a tagged photo from a girl's lunch just last week. There she was, my mother, grinning from ear to ear, wrapped in the exact $3,200 cashmere coat I had explicitly refused to buy her last Christmas, the coat she'd cried over, claiming she had never had anything truly nice. She wasn't just stealing to pay bills. She was stealing to go shopping. And my father, Robert, the silent partner, the peacemaker. I remembered a conversation from last month. We were at dinner. He'd leaned in, his voice confidential. So, Chloe, how is that investment strategy of yours doing? Is it aggressive? Are you diversified enough? I'd laughed. I'd told him, it's not an investment, Dad. It's just a high-yield savings account. It's fine. He wasn't making small talk. He was performing reconnaissance. He was probing my defenses. He was trying to find out exactly how much was in the vault before his family blew the doors off. It was 6 a.m. The sun was just beginning to stain the sky over the Rockies. I had the spreadsheet. I had the IP addresses. I had the forged signature. I had the evidence of mail theft. I had the voice recording. I had the social media photos. I plugged in my external hard drive, the one I use for secure code backups. I created a new encrypted volume. I named it Project Retribution. I copied everything. The screenshots, the CSV files, the audio file of Karen's voice, the PDFs. I made a second copy on a secure thumb drive, which I zipped into an inner pocket of my gym bag. I looked at the legal pad where I'd been scribbling my timeline. I drew a thick black line under the last entry. I wrote 2 new rules for myself. Rule 1. All future conversations regarding money are to be documented. Time, date, attendees, and a full summary. If the setting is legal, my phone's recorder will be active. Rule 2. Do not react, only collect. My family thought this was over. They thought they had won. They didn't realize I was just finishing the discovery phase. This wasn't a family drama. This was a data breach, and I was about to patch the vulnerability permanently. My laptop screen was a mosaic of their financial crimes. My evidence was compiled, but data without action is just history. I was ready to make my next move. At 7:01 a.m., I called Jessica Cole. We'd been roommates at Stanford. I'd gone into data architecture. She'd gone into civil litigation. I hadn't seen her in months, but I knew she was an associate at Red Ridge Hart, one of the sharpest firms in Denver. She answered on the second ring, her voice already crisp. Cole. Jessica, it's Chloe Mitchell. I need to hire you, or I need to hire your firm. I'm not calling as a friend right now. I have a severe financial compromise issue involving theft and forgery. There was a half-second pause. My 9:30 canned. Can you be at my office at 9? Bring everything. And Chloe, don't talk to anyone else before you see me. At 8:55, I was sitting in the glass-walled lobby of Red Ridge Hart, the encrypted thumb drive heavy in my pocket. Jessica's office overlooked the city, a clean, organized space that smelled faintly of expensive paper and lemon. She shut the door. She didn't offer coffee. She just sat down, opened a yellow legal pad and said, "Hit me." I didn't get emotional. I gave her the executive summary. The $84,500 emergency fund, the $27,000 siphoned from the utility account, the consulting fees to Shawcraft Works, the forged signature, the voice recording from the smart speaker, the intercepted mail, the IP logs from my parents' house. She listened, her pen moving with silent speed. She didn't gasp. She didn't say, "That's horrible." When I finished, she just tapped her pen on the pad. "Good," she said, her voice firm. "You didn't confront them. You didn't cry or yell. You treated it like an audit, which is exactly what this is. Your emotional reaction is a liability. Your evidence is an asset. From this moment, you do not engage with them on this topic. Not a text, not a call. You are a black hole. They get nothing. They are no longer your family. They are the opposing party." She leaned forward. "Here is the immediate action plan. We are building a new, hardened perimeter. Your old life is compromised. We seal it. Then we attack." I was ready. "What's first?" "First, you are invisible." I left her office and went directly to a different bank, a small local credit union my family had never heard of. I opened a new checking account and a new savings account using only my own information. I declined paper statements. I declined overdraft protection. I requested a physical two-factor authentication key, the kind that plugs into a USB port. No more codes sent to phones or read by smart speakers. During my lunch break, I logged into my company's HR portal. I changed my direct deposit information. My next paycheck, my primary lifeline, was now routed to an account they didn't know existed. The next step was cauterizing the wound. I went to my car in the parking garage. I took a deep breath. I pulled out my phone, opened the voice recorder, and hit record. I dialed Capital Reserve Bank. A polite voice answered. "Thank you for calling Capital Reserve. This is Daniel. How can I help you?" "Hello, Daniel. My name is Chloe Mitchell. I am placing this call regarding my accounts, and I am informing you that this conversation is being recorded for my records in accordance with Colorado state law." The immediate shift in his tone was audible. I understand. How can I assist you, Miss Mitchell?" "I need to immediately cancel all supplementary cards associated with my accounts, specifically any card issued in the name of Megan Shaw. I am also revoking all previously granted verbal or written telephone authorizations for wire transfers on all accounts in my name." "I can certainly assist you with that. May I ask the reason?" "The reason is irrelevant to this request. Please proceed. I also need to change my password and all of my security questions." I spent the next 20 minutes locking it down. The new security questions were not things Karen could guess. What was your mother's maiden name? Blueberry. What was your first pet's name? Vector. What street did you grow up on? Heisenberg. They were no longer answers. They were passwords. When I hung up, I immediately logged into the online portals for all three major credit bureaus: Experian, Equifax, TransUnion. I placed fraud alerts on all of them. Then I went a step further. I placed a full credit freeze on my file with all three. Megan had opened a line of credit in my name once. She would never do it again. My credit was now a fortress. No one could even attempt to open a new account without me personally unfreezing it with a unique PIN. My defenses were up. Now the counteroffensive. I called the bank's fraud department, still recording. I am formally disputing 3 telephone withdrawals from my high-yield savings account totaling $84,500. I am also submitting the letter of authorization used to approve those transfers as a forgery. We will open an investigation, Miss Mitchell. Do you have? You will receive an email from me in the next 60 seconds, I said, attaching the PDF of the signature. I am formally requesting a full forensic analysis of the signature on that document. I want it compared to my genuine signatures on file, specifically analyzing the ink pressure, the hesitation points, and the stroke patterns. It is a forgery. The finality in my voice left no room for argument. While I was dismantling my old financial life, Jessica was weaponizing the evidence. By 4 p.m., she emailed me a draft. It was a formal demand letter and notice to cease and desist. It was not addressed to Mom. It was addressed to Miss Karen Shaw and Miss Megan Shaw. It was CC'd to Mr. Robert Mitchell. It was brutal in its clarity. It listed the exact dates and amounts of the wire transfers. It referenced the fraudulent authorization. It named Shaw Craftworks LLC as the recipient of the siphoned funds. It demanded full and immediate repayment of the total sum. This is going out via certified mail, return receipt, requested to your condo, and to their home address, Jessica explained. They will have to sign for it. There will be no ambiguity. One last loose end. The mail. Megan still lived in my condo. She still had access to my mailbox. She had intercepted bank mail once. She would do it again. I drove to the nearest post office and rented a P.O. box. It was small, metal, and anonymous. I filed a change of address form, routing all mail from Capital Reserve Bank, my new credit union, and Red Ridge Heart to this secure box. My home was no longer a safe harbor for information. That night I came home. The certified letter wouldn't arrive for a day. The bank investigation was pending. The credit bureaus were locked. I had one last piece of hardware to install. I'd stopped at an electronics store on the way home. I bought a high-sensitivity voice-activated audio recorder shaped exactly like a generic USB phone charger as the homeowner in the common areas of my own condo. I was legally protected in setting it up. I plugged it into the kitchen outlet low near the baseboard, partially obscured by the small breakfast table. The legal goal, Jessica had stressed, was civil repayment. We wanted the money back. We would use the threat of a criminal referral for forgery and wire fraud as the lever, but the goal was a signed settlement. We didn't want a messy criminal trial. We wanted them cornered. Megan was on the sofa, feet up on my coffee table, watching some terrible reality show. She didn't look up. "Long day?" she asked, her voice bored. "You have no idea," I said. I went to the kitchen. I opened the fridge. I was calm. I was precise. I was waiting. My family had been playing a game with no rules, believing my love for them was their shield. They didn't know I had just changed the game. Now we were playing my way with rules, with documentation, and with consequences. The trap was set. All I had to do was act normal and wait for them to expose themselves again. The certified letters from Red Ridge Heart arrived on Thursday. I knew because I received the digital delivery notification at my new P.O. box. The hard copies, however, were delivered to my condo and my parents' house. I came home from work to find Megan sitting on the sofa, pointedly ignoring the stiff, important-looking envelope on the kitchen counter. It was addressed to her. She was watching her show, her jaw tight. She didn't say hello. The silence in the condo had become a living thing, a heavy, suffocating presence that followed me from room to room. My phone rang. It was Karen. I let it ring twice, took a breath, centered myself and answered, putting it on speaker. Hello. My voice was flat, neutral. Chloe, honey. Her voice was saccharine, a tone I hadn't heard in years. It was the voice she used on bank tellers and store clerks when she wanted to return something without a receipt. I got this very strange letter from some lawyers. Yes, I hired them. Hired them, Chloe? Why would you do that? It's just a misunderstanding. We're family. You don't bring lawyers into family. When family steals $84,500, you do. A sharp intake of breath. Steal? That is a vicious word. I didn't steal, Chloe. I temporarily borrowed it. You know, I've given you my entire life. I think I deserved a little something. A bonus. You're my daughter. What's yours is mine. We are not having this discussion, I said. The letter is clear. It outlines the path to repayment. Repayment? She scoffed, the sweetness vanishing, replaced by her signature indignation. You're going to make your own mother repay you after everything, after the sleepless nights? Yes, I am. I hung up. The USB charger in the kitchen outlet glowed faintly. The interaction was logged. The next evening, Megan was in the kitchen blending an obnoxiously loud smoothie. She was acting as if the letter had never arrived, she said, shouting over the blender's whine. I've been networking. I found this amazing new KOL. She's based in Boulder. She has a huge lifestyle following, and she's agreed to do a full brand integration for Shaw Craftworks. I just looked at her sipping my water. She's a perfect fit, Megan continued, pouring the green sludge into a glass. She'll relaunch the entire brand. The only thing is, her retainer is $8,000. I'll need that by the first of the month. I almost laughed. The audacity. It was breathtaking. You need $8,000? I repeated, my voice devoid of emotion. Yes, for the investment. It's going to put us on the map. Megan, I said, setting my glass down. The Shaw Craftworks LLC account, the one you've been using for consulting fees, currently contains $27,000 of my money. You can use that. The color drained from her face. She had no idea I knew about the utility account. She thought only the emergency fund had been discovered. I don't know what you're talking about, she stammered. I do. I have the statements. $27,000 transferred in 9 payments, always on a Friday night just before midnight. Use that for your KOL. She grabbed her smoothie and fled to her room. The next call predictably was from my father, the peacemaker, the enabler. Chloe, what are you doing? His voice was weary, disappointed. You've got your mother in a panic, and you're fighting with your sister. This isn't like you, this legal stuff. It's too much. We're a family. We are, I agreed. And 3 members of this family conspired to steal over $100,000 from the 4th. Don't use that language, Chloe. It wasn't stealing. It was a poor decision, a family contribution. He sighed. Look, let's just tear up these papers. We can sit down, all of us, and make a new family budget. We can just put all the money together, a shared family fund. We can all contribute, and we can all draw from it when we need it. It's cleaner. It's what families do. Shared money, I said. The phrase made my skin crawl. That's an interesting proposal, Dad. Shared according to what contract? What are the contribution terms? What are the withdrawal rules? Who is the administrator? I've never seen a contract for this shared arrangement. Contract? He sounded baffled. We don't need a contract, Chloe. We're family. It's based on trust. Trust, I said, was voided at 23A. When my password was reset from your IP address. Trust was voided when my signature was forged on a letter of authorization. We are long past trust. We are in the contract phase now. You're being so cold, he whispered. This isn't just about money. This is about us. You're wrong, I replied. It has only ever been about money. I disconnected the call. I watched Megan leave the condo, slamming the door. I waited 5 minutes. I went into her room. In her closet, tucked under a pile of designer shoe boxes, was a small digital mini safe. It was new. The mandatory Sunday dinner at my parents' house was the next battleground. I went. It was part of the plan. Act normal. Gather data. The air was thick with unspoken resentment. Karen served dry roast chicken, her movements marred. I hope it's okay, she said, sliding the plate in front of me. I remember when you had pneumonia. You were 12. You wouldn't eat anything but my chicken. I stayed awake for 3 nights straight, holding your head, wiping your fever. 3 whole nights. I never left your side. The guilt card. It was old and it was worn. The chicken is fine, Mom, thank you. She's just so cold, Megan muttered to Robert loud enough for me to hear. If it wasn't for this family, she wouldn't even have that fancy career. We supported her. We gave her the space to focus. Some of us had to stay behind and actually help Mom and Dad. This was the narrative. I was the selfish, cold engineer. They were the warm, supportive family I had abandoned. I stopped eating. I placed my fork and knife carefully on the plate. I reached into my bag, which I had set by my chair. I pulled out a single folded piece of paper. I'm glad you brought up supporting the family, Megan. I unfolded the paper and laid it on the table. It was a summary spreadsheet. I ran the numbers for the last 24 months, I said, my voice calm and clear in the suddenly silent room. In that time, 95% of all household expenses for this house, my condo, Megan's car insurance, and Karen's discretionary spending, has been paid directly by me. My focus on my career, as you call it, is what has been funding this entire family. Your contribution, Megan, has been negative. You have cost this family and diverted funds a total of $27,000, not including your living expenses, which I also pay. Robert stared at the paper. Karen's face was white. Megan looked like I had slapped her. This, I said, tapping the total at the bottom of the page, is the data? The conversation about support is over. The rest of the meal was eaten in absolute frigid silence. The quiet was worse than the yelling. It was the sound of pure, unadulterated contempt. I went home. Megan followed an hour later. She didn't speak to me. She went straight to her room. I settled onto the sofa, my laptop open, pretending to work. I was observing. At 11:45 p.m., she emerged, thinking I was busy or asleep. She tiptoed to her closet. I heard the soft beep-beep boop of the digital keypad and the clunk of the mini safe's bolt sliding open. She was in there for 30 seconds, then the sound of it locking again. This was a pattern. This was new. 3 nights later, I had been logging the audio from the kitchen recorder every morning. It was mostly just Megan complaining on the phone or the whir of the blender, but this recording was different. It was time-stamped at 2:15 a.m. It was 2 voices whispering, Karen and Megan. My mother must have let herself in with the key she still had. Megan's voice. The bank said the card was canceled. The fraud alert she put on. It's blocking everything. Karen's voice. It's fine. The card was messy anyway. I told you. Robert got the rest of the information from her desk last week. We have the new checking account number, the one she thinks is secret. We just have to wait for her paycheck to land. A pause. Are you sure? Megan whispered. Of course, Karen said, her voice hard. She locked the savings, but she can't lock her salary. Next time, we don't do it in pieces. We take the rest, all of it. She owes us that much. I sat back in my chair, the headphones still on. They weren't just thieves. They were predators. They had found my new account. They were planning the next strike. I looked at the smart speaker on the counter. The original vulnerability. They thought they were planning. They were confessing. A cold, slow smile spread across my face. The trap was half closed. They had just given me the last piece of evidence I needed. They had just confirmed their intent, and they had no idea I was listening. The first shot was fired digitally. I woke up on Wednesday to a text from a cousin. "Hey, is everything okay with you and Aunt Karen?" I saw Megan's post. I didn't have to look. I already knew, but I checked anyway. Megan's Facebook feed was a curated mess of her failed candle business and inspirational quotes. This one was new. It was a generic graphic of a sunset with text overlaid. It's so sad when people get a little bit of success and forget the family that sacrificed everything to get them there. Some people only know the value of $1, not the value of loyalty. It was vague, but it was targeted. The comments underneath were a mix of fawning agreement and concerned. Nosy questions and aunt. Thinking of you, sweetie. Family is everything. A distant cousin. Is this about Chloe? I hope not. Megan. Of course, replied to none of them, letting the implication hang in the air like poison. The second shot came from Karen. It was a forwarded screenshot sent to me by the same concerned cousin. It was from Karen's private book club group chat. My heart is simply broken. Karen had written the text accompanied by a string of prayer hand emojis. I gave my entire life to raising my children, and now my own daughter, my youngest, is treating me like a criminal. All because of a simple misunderstanding about money. She's hired lawyers against her own mother. Please pray for our family. I don't know how much more of this stress I can take. The narrative was set. I was the cruel, ungrateful child, and she was the heartbroken matriarch. The third shot came from Robert. He was too smart to put anything in writing. His attack was verbal. My uncle called me that afternoon. "Chloe, your father called me this morning. He sounds terrible. He's worried sick about you." "Worried about me?" I asked, my voice flat. "Yes. He said you're well. He said you're not yourself, that you've become this cold engineer, that you only know how to see numbers on a spreadsheet, not the people behind them," he said. "You're tearing the family apart over money when all he and your mother want is love." The unholy trinity. Megan painted me as stingy. Karen painted me as ungrateful. Robert painted me as cold. They were systematically isolating me, building a wall of public opinion to hide their theft behind. I screenshotted Megan's post and the comments. I screenshotted the text from Karen's chat. I made a detailed note of my uncle's call, time-stamped and summarized. I emailed all three to Jessica. Her reply was immediate. "Do not engage. Do not reply to your cousin. Do not post your side of the story. Do not defend yourself. They are playing in a mud pit and they want you to jump in. You will not win there. You will only win in my office and in the bank's fraud department. Save these. They are exhibits. They established motive and intent to defame. Stay silent. Let them talk." So, I stayed silent and I escalated. I sent a group text to Karen, Robert, and Megan. "I am holding a formal family budget meeting at my condo this Sunday at 10 a.m. Your attendance is mandatory if you wish to have any input on the financial resolution of the $111,500 you have taken." Paige's reply. Financial resolution so dramatic. Karen's, "I will be there to discuss how you are going to apologize to and support your mother." Robert's, "This is a good step. Chloe, a family talk is all we ever wanted." I waited an hour, then I sent the follow-up text. To ensure the conversation remains productive and documented, I am inviting a neutral third party to observe and take notes. My neighbor Mark Torres has agreed to attend. The explosion was instantaneous. My phone lit up. "Megan, a neighbor? Are you clinically insane? You're going to air our private family business to some random gym trainer? You are unbelievable." Then a call from Karen. I let it go to voicemail. The message she left was frantic. "Chloe Mitchell, you call me back right now. You are not, I repeat, not bringing a stranger into this house to humiliate me. This is a family matter. He has no right. You are doing this just to hurt me. I texted back a simple cold reply to the group. This stopped being a private family matter when you forged legal documents. My condo, Sunday, 10 a.m. Mark will be there. On Friday afternoon, the first domino fell. An email landed in my inbox. The subject line: an update regarding your fraud claim. Case number 881A. My heart didn't pound. It steadied. I opened it. Dear Miss Mitchell, our preliminary investigation into the disputed letter of authorization, dated 3 months ago, is complete. Our forensic signature analysis team has concluded that the signature provided on the document does not match the characteristics of your signature of record. The pressure, stroke, and connecting letters are inconsistent with your client file. A full report will follow, but we are moving forward internally, treating this as a fraudulent instrument. I read it 3 times. Does not match. It wasn't my word against theirs anymore. It was a fact. It was a finding. I had external corporate validation. I drove home. I knew Karen and Megan would be at my condo. They were huddling, planning their strategy for the Sunday meeting. I walked in and they were seated at the kitchen table, nursing glasses of wine, their heads bent in conspiracy. "Chloe," Karen started, her voice already laced with performative grievance. "About this Sunday, your father and I have decided." "I have an update," I said, cutting her off. I didn't raise my voice. I just stated a fact. I just received the preliminary report from the bank. Megan froze, her wine glass halfway to her lips. "The fraud department," I continued, "has confirmed that the signature on the authorization letter is a forgery." The word hung in the air. "Forgery." Megan went white. Karen's eyes widened. She let out a theatrical gasp. "Forgery? How? How could? Oh my." She pressed a hand to her chest. I feel faint. I think I need to. I can't breathe." She slumped in her chair, her head lolling dramatically. I didn't move. I didn't rush forward. I just watched her and I saw it. Her right hand, the one not clutching her heart, was on the table, gripping her iPhone. Her knuckles were white. She was clutching it so hard it looked like the screen might crack. It wasn't the posture of a fainting woman. It was the posture of a cornered animal clinging to its only escape route. "You should sit down, Karen," I said. "I'll get you a glass of water. Sunday at 10 is going to be a difficult meeting." Sunday morning, the air in the condo was electric. I had been up for hours. I'd cleaned. I'd set up a pot of coffee. At 9:50 a.m., Mark Torres knocked. He was 31, a fitness coach, and the most disciplined, neutral person I knew. I'd given him the brief. "This is a civil dispute with my family over money. I need an objective witness to observe the meeting and document everyone's behavior and statements. That's it." He nodded. He was all business. "Chloe, ready?" "Ready. Coffee?" "Black, please." He took a seat in the armchair in the corner of the living room. He opened a fresh legal pad and clicked his pen. At 10:02, my family arrived. Robert, Karen, and Megan. They walked in as a unit, a phalanx of defiance. Then they saw Mark. Robert stopped. "Chloe, who is this?" "This is Mark Torres, the observer I told you about." "I cannot believe you are doing this," Karen whispered, her face pale with fury. "You are trying to humiliate us." Mark looked up from his pad. "Good morning." He noted the time. 10:03 a.m. "Miss Shaw states she feels she is being humiliated." Karen's mouth snapped shut. The simple act of being documented, of having her words read back to her, had silenced her more effectively than any argument. The 3 of them sat down on the sofa across from me. The bank's email was in a manila folder on the coffee table. The atmosphere was brittle, ready to shatter. I had one last piece of bait to lay. "I'll just get the water," I said, getting up. As I did, I accidentally left my personal phone on the arm of my chair. As I walked to the kitchen, I used my watch to trigger a preset alarm. The phone screen lit up on the chair. A calendar reminder. Transfer $15,000 to new reserve account. 2 p.m. It was fake. Of course, the new account I'd set up had my paycheck, but nothing near that amount. It was a lure. It was bait for the audio recording from part 4 where Karen had said, "We take the rest." I stood at the kitchen counter, my back to them, pretending to pour water. I watched their reflection in the dark screen of the microwave. I saw Karen's eyes dart from my face to the phone. I saw her eyes narrow as she read the reminder. I saw her look at Megan. I saw Megan look at the phone. I saw them exchange a look, a tiny fractional nod. They thought I was moving money. They thought I was careless. They thought they had another chance. I turned around holding the tray of glasses. I picked up my phone, glanced at the reminder, and swiped it away. I sat down. "Well," I said, looking at the three of them, "let's begin." The bank's email was in my lap. Mark's pen was poised. The trap was set. The meeting began. Mark Torres sat in the armchair, legal pad on his knee, pen in hand. He clicked it. "It is 10:04 a.m., he said, his voice even. "The meeting is commencing. Miss Chloe Mitchell, Miss Karen Shaw, Mr. Robert Mitchell, Miss Megan Shaw, and myself, Mark Torres, are present." My family was a tense line on my sofa. Robert in the middle, trying to project concerned patriarch Karen on his left, vibrating with indignation. Megan on his right was pale and sullen, picking at the hem of her sleeve. They looked like they were bracing for a storm. They had no idea I was bringing a clinical dissection. I did not sit. I stood by the coffee table. On it, I placed 3 plain 9x12 manila envelopes side by side. Each was sealed. "Thank you for coming," I said, my voice as flat as a database query. "I have called this meeting to present the findings of my audit regarding the $111,500 that has been removed from my accounts." "Audit?" Karen scoffed. "You make it sound so corporate." "It is," I said. I picked up the first envelope. Exhibit A, the bank statements. I unclasped it and slid out a stack of papers. They were printouts. I placed the first one on the table in front of them. It was the summary for my emergency fund. "This," I said, pointing to the highlighted line, "is the balance as of 3 weeks ago, $84,500. And this is the balance, as of today, $91,112. Here are the 3 withdrawals that drained it." I then added a second set of papers, the statements from the joint utility account. "And this," I continued, "is the accounting of the joint household account for the last 9 months. It shows $27,000 in transfers made in 9 separate payments to a single entity, Shaw Craftworks LLC. I looked directly at Megan. She wasn't just pale anymore. She was ashen. Her eyes darted to Karen, wide and terrified. She had believed that money was her secret. 27,000, I repeated, for consulting fees and strategic planning, a company that, according to the Colorado Secretary of State, has filed no annual reports and has no listed revenue. "Theft?" Karen shrieked, lurching forward. "You watch your mouth. How dare you?" Mark's pen scratched on the paper. 10:07 a.m. Ms. Shaw objects to the word theft. Karen's mouth snapped shut. Being documented was like a bucket of ice water. I picked up the second envelope. Exhibit B, the kitchen audio. My movements were deliberate. I placed a small black Bluetooth speaker on the center of the table. I connected my phone. I opened the audio file. "This was recorded by my smart speaker," I explained. 3 weeks ago." I pressed play. The room filled with the sound of Karen's voice, tiny and clear. Karen's voice. "Hey, device. Read my text messages." Speaker's voice. "New message from Capital Reserve Bank. Your one-time verification code is 933018. There was a rustle. Then my father's voice, muffled from the other room. Robert's voice. "What was that code? Karen, did you get it?" Karen's voice. I got it. I got it. 933. And then, unmistakably, Megan's giggle. A high, sharp sound. I pressed stop. The silence that followed was absolute. It was heavy, suffocating. Robert stared at the speaker as if it were a snake. Megan looked like she was going to be physically sick. Karen was the first to break. She forced a laugh. It was a brittle, awful sound. "Oh, that," she said, waving her hand dismissively. That was a joke. A silly game. We were playing around with your little gadget. It was nothing. You're twisting a joke, Chloe." "How could you?" Mark's pen moved. 10:09 a.m. Miss Shaw identifies the recording as a joke and a silly game. Karen's fake smile dissolved. I picked up the third envelope. Exhibit C, the bank's response. This, I did not place on the table. I held it. "After you joked your way into my account, you needed a way to move the money. A simple transfer was too small. You needed authorization. So, you submitted a letter of authorization for telephone transfers in my name." "We were authorized," Karen insisted. "You're our daughter," it's implied. "The bank," I said, my voice dropping, "disagrees." I pulled the printed email from the envelope. I filed a fraud claim. "The bank's forensic signature team has completed its preliminary analysis. I will read you their finding." I held the paper. Quote, "Our forensic signature analysis team has concluded that the signature provided on the document does not match. The characteristics of your signature of record, the pressure, stroke, and connecting letters are inconsistent. We are moving forward internally, treating this as a fraudulent instrument." End quote. Fraudulent instrument. The word echoed. This was not family anymore. This was not a misunderstanding. This was a legal term. This was a crime. The room was dead quiet. Even Robert, the great plater, had nothing to say. His face was slack with shock. Into this void, Mark spoke. He did not look up from his notes. "Miss Shaw?" he asked, his voice calm. "Who submitted this fraudulent signature form to the bank?" No one answered. No one breathed. "Mr. Mitchell, Miss Megan Shaw, does anyone know who physically delivered or faxed this form?" Silence. I stepped forward, placing 2 more items on the table. They were photographs. "Perhaps this will help," I said. "This is a photo of the ripped-open supplementary card envelope from the bank, which I found hidden in my own kitchen drawer. A card which was mailed to this address in my name and subsequently activated." I looked at Paige. "You've been checking my mail, and this is the IP login history. It shows a successful login to my bank account at 2:03 inches the morning. The IP address resolves to your home, Dad." Megan suddenly broke. It was not a cry. It was a scream. "I was just helping her!" she shrieked, leaping to her feet, her finger pointing at Karen. "She asked me to. She said it was our money. She said you owed it to her. I just did the computer part. She's the one who signed the paper. I just did what she told me to." It was a confession. A full, detailed, desperate confession. She had just named Karen as the forger, and herself as the digital accomplice. Mark's pen flew across the paper. Robert finally exploded. He slammed his fist onto the coffee table, making the speaker jump. "Enough!" he roared, his face purple. "Stop it, all of you. I will not sit here in your cold, sterile apartment and watch you persecute your mother. This is a family. This is an interrogation. You are oppressing us, Chloe, with your exhibits. This stops now. We are leaving." He made to stand up. "Sit down," I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it cut through his rage like a scalpel. He froze. "This is not a negotiation," I said. "This is a notification of terms. As of my calls last week, all supplementary cards have been canceled. The joint account is closed. The fraud investigation is active. This meeting is over." I walked to my front door and opened it. "Megan," I said, "you have 48 hours to vacate my condo. Your name is not on the lease. You are a guest and your welcome is revoked." "You can't kick me out," she wailed. "I can and I am. I am having the locks changed on Tuesday. If your belongings are still here, I will have them placed in storage at your expense. Mom, Dad, you are no longer welcome here. Your keys, please. Karen stared at me, aghast. You would make your own mother homeless, Megan shrieked. I am not. I am removing you from my home. Where you go is your problem. Now get out. They were stunned into silence. Robert, for the first time in his life, was speechless. He pulled Karen to her feet. Paige, sobbing, followed them out, grabbing her purse. Karen, you will regret this. Chloe, you will die lonely. Robert, you have destroyed this family. They slammed the door. Mark clicked his pen. Meeting concluded at 10:17 a.m. He looked at me, the first sign of emotion on his face. It was respect. That was thorough. They don't think it's over, I said, closing the deadbolt. What do you mean? I tapped my phone, which I had put in my pocket. They think that was all the evidence. They think it's my word, and Megan's outburst against Karen's denial. I smiled. It was a cold, tired smile. They have no idea I have another recording, the one where they planned the next theft, the one where Karen, in her own voice, explicitly admits to the last one. I put the envelopes back in a neat pile. I had one last card to play, and I was saving it for the final hand. I changed the locks on Tuesday. Megan had left the condo in a state of petty vandalism. Nail polish spilled on the bathroom counter. A deep scratch in the hardwood floor by the entryway. I paid a locksmith $500 to install new high-security deadbolts. The silence in my home was immediate and profound. It was the sound of a perimeter being secured. The war, however, was shifting to a new front. On Wednesday, I received a call from Jessica. Her voice was different. Not just focused, it was sharp. Chloe, I got the full disclosure packet from the bank's legal team, she said. They sent everything they had on file. Not just the final forged authorization letter, but the other documents your mother used to verify her identity on the phone. What other documents? Do you remember the knee surgery you had last year? The one that laid you up for a week? Vividly, I said. The memory was hazy, thick with anesthesia and pain medication. You signed a power of attorney, didn't you? My blood ran cold. I signed a healthcare power of attorney, I said, my voice tight. A temporary one. It was in case there were complications during the surgery, Karen. She pushed it on me. She said it was just in case the doctors needed her permission to act. She was just in case. All right, Jessica said, her voice dark. She kept a copy, Chloe. She didn't just forge your signature on the bank form. She manufactured an entirely new document. I was in her office an hour later. She laid two documents side by side on the polished mahogany table. One was the healthcare POA. I remembered it was 2 pages signed by me. The other looked almost identical. The font was the same. The formatting was the same, but the title was different. Durable Financial Power of Attorney. Look closely, Jessica said, pointing to the last page. My signature was there. The notary stamp was there, but the preceding pages were different. She didn't forge your signature on this, Jessica explained. She didn't need to. She photocopied the last page of your medical POA, the page with your real signature and the notary stamp. Then she typed up a completely fake financial POA, making it look like a 3-page document. She stapled your signature page to the back of it. I stared at it. It was a phantom, a Frankenstein's monster of a legal document created with a photocopier and boundless audacity. This is what she used to convince the call center agents, Jessica continued. The first-level employee sees a fax of a notarized signed POA. They stop asking questions. It was enough to get her past the initial security wall, allowing her to then submit the other forged withdrawal letter. This is why she's been so confident. This is why she keeps talking about her reward and her rights. She thinks she has a legal document. She thinks she has a bulletproof shield. She thinks I signed it, I whispered, remembering the fog of the painkillers. She was counting on me not remembering. It gets worse, Jessica said. She tapped the notary seal on the fake document. This part is a forgery. I ran the commission number on this stamp. It's invalid. The notary public listed a Thomas K. Reed is not and has never been registered in the state of Colorado. She either faked the stamp herself or had Megan design it. This isn't just a family dispute anymore, Chloe. This isn't just theft. This is felony document forgery, manufacturing a fraudulent instrument, lying to a federal financial institution. This is hardcore. I sat back, the air knocked out of me. This wasn't a desperate grab for cash. This was a long con, calculated, premeditated. What does this mean? I asked. It means we have them, Jessica said, her voice devoid of triumph. This moves from he said she said to a prosecutor's desk. The bank's internal investigator will be required to file this with the police. We are past the point of just getting the money back. They are facing criminal charges. A vision flashed in my mind. Karen in a courtroom, Robert crumbling the public shame. I don't want them in prison. I said the words tasting like acid. I can't. I don't want to be the daughter who sent her mother to jail. That's a life sentence for me too. I understand, Jessica said, nodding slowly. But you cannot unring this bell. The bank's fraud department is already moving. The only way to control this is to get ahead of it. How? We give them one last chance to choose their fate, she said, pulling a fresh legal pad toward her. We offer them a settlement, a civil compromise. We draft a legally binding repayment agreement. We make it ironclad and we attach an ultimatum. They either sign it agreeing to all our terms, or we take this entire file. The audio recordings, the bank's fraud report, Megan's confession, and this masterpiece of forgery, and we walk it over to the Denver district attorney ourselves. They can choose to owe you money, or they can choose to face a grand jury. Jessica drafted the offer. It was not a request. It was a demand for settlement. It was brutally simple. One full repayment of the $84,500 stolen from the emergency fund to a structured non-negotiable repayment schedule, $3,520.83 per month for 24 months to be paid by automated transfer. The $27,000, siphoned into Shawcraft Works, would be handled in a separate civil suit against Megan's company. 3. A formal notarized letter of apology drafted by Jessica's office, in which Karen and Megan would explicitly acknowledge the theft and the forgery. 4. A permanent injunction barring them from any and all access to my property, my mail, my devices, and my finances. This is the offer, Jessica said. There is no negotiation. There are no family discussions. They accept these terms in full within 48 hours, or we proceed with the criminal referral. She attached the file to an email addressed to Karen, Robert, and Megan. She hit send. We didn't have to wait 48 hours. We waited 48 minutes. My phone rang. It was Robert. I looked at Jessica. She tapped her phone, initiating the conference line. Answer it. Put it on speaker. Hello, Dad. Chloe. My God, you have to stop this. His voice was thin, cracking with panic. We got the email, a repayment schedule, a notarized apology. This is insane. It's the offer. Dad, it's the only one. I heard shuffling. Megan's voice, shrill in the background. She can't do this. Tell her she can't. $3,500. How are we supposed to live? She's trying to ruin us. She's trying to take the house. Then the main voice. Karen. Her tone was not panicked. It was ice. It was pure distilled rage. I am not signing anything, she said, her voice low and dangerous. Especially not an apology. I did nothing wrong. I took what was mine. That money was my reward. It was my payment for 29 years of raising you. I am owed that. You think you can scare me with your little lawyer? I had your authorization. I had the paperwork. There it was. The reliance on her fraudulent shield. Jessica's voice entered the call. Calm and cold. M. Shaw, This is Jessica Cole, counsel for Chloe Mitchell. I advise you to stop talking. The paperwork you are referring to has been identified as a fraudulent instrument. The notary seal on it is fake. That document is not your shield. It is the prosecution's Exhibit A. You have two choices. You can be a debtor in a civil agreement, or you can be a defendant in a criminal case. This is not a negotiation. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. Robert, Jessica said. Megan, you are both accessories to this. You can be co-defendants, or you can sign the agreement. The offer is on the table. We need to talk, Robert stammered. We need time. You have until 5 p.m. tomorrow, I said, my voice as hard as the deadbolt on my new door. 5 p.m. Then the choice is no longer yours. I ended the call. The clock in Jessica's office was ticking. The countdown had begun. The meeting was set for Friday, at 4 p.m., my territory, the main conference room at Red Ridge Hart. It was a space designed to intimidate a massive polished granite table, 12 chairs, and a floor-to-ceiling glass wall with a hide view of the Rocky Mountains. It was cold, sterile, and silent. Jessica and I were waiting. The deadline had been 5 p.m. yesterday. At 4:58, Robert had called Jessica's office, his voice frantic, and agreed to a final mediation. They arrived at 4:15, 15 minutes late, a deliberate power move. Robert looked gray, his shoulders slumped. Megan was with him, her eyes red and puffy, her defiance gone, replaced by a sullen, childish terror. And then came Karen. She swept in, not as a defendant, but as a dignitary. She was wearing the coat, the $3,200 cashmere coat from Neiman & Company, the one she'd bought with my stolen money. She was wearing the evidence. She wore it like a trophy, a symbol of her entitlement. She was holding a large latte from a premium coffee shop. She looked rested. She looked smug. Sorry, we're late, she said. Not sounding sorry at all. The traffic was just dreadful. Jessica didn't stand. She didn't offer them coffee or water. She simply gestured to the 3 empty chairs across the table. Please sit. The clock is running. As they settled, Jessica clicked a remote. The massive wall-mounted screen at the end of the room lit up. This was not a family chat. This was a presentation of findings. Let's dispense with the pleasantries, Jessica said, her voice echoing slightly in the large room. You are here because you received our settlement offer. You refused to sign. This is your last opportunity to avoid a criminal referral. We will begin by reviewing the undisputed facts. She clicked the remote. Fact 1. A timeline appeared. The IP login from Robert's house at 2:03 a.m. The audio transcript from my kitchen speaker. The bank transfer logs. Fact 2. A high-resolution scan of the forged signature on the withdrawal authorization appeared. Next to it, a scan of my real signature from my passport. The bank's preliminary finding was highlighted. Inconsistent, not a match, fraudulent instrument. Fact 3. The screen changed again. It showed the fake durable financial power of attorney she had manufactured with the photocopied signature page stapled to the back, and next to it the report from the Colorado Secretary of State, showing the notary commission number was non-existent. Felony-level document forgery, Jessica stated. Karen watched all of this with the bored, passive expression of someone watching a dull corporate training video. She sipped her latte. When Jessica finished, she clicked the screen off. The room was silent again. She slid 3 copies of the settlement agreement across the granite table. You will sign this today, Jessica said. You will agree to the 24-month repayment plan. You will sign the formal apology, or we are done. Karen pushed the papers back, her lipstick leaving a perfect red ring on the coffee lid. She looked at me, ignoring Jessica completely. Are you finished with your little show, Chloe? She asked, her voice dripping with condescension. Sign the paper, Mom? I said. My voice was quiet. I am not signing anything, she said. She laughed, a short, sharp bark. You just don't get it, do you? After all this, all these exhibits, You are my daughter. Your money is my money. That is the only agreement that matters. I am not repaying you. You are going to support me. You owe me. You failed to give me my reward. So, I took it. That is all that happened here." Robert, seeing the look on Jessica's face, panicked. He jumped in, his hands clasped on the table. "Karen, please, let's be reasonable, Chloe. Honey, she's just upset. We can work this out. We can pay something back. A gesture of goodwill. We could manage $200 a month, maybe." $200 a month for a theft of $84,500. It was a joke. It was a calculation that would take over 35 years to complete. It was a meaningless, insulting offer. "No," I said. "And the 27,000? "That's just a business dispute," Megan suddenly piped up, finding a surge of her old misplaced confidence. "That money. Shaw Craftworks provided real services. We had strategy meetings. I did market research. It was a legitimate corporate expense. You can't just claw it back." Jessica held up a hand, silencing her. "Miss Shaw, I'm glad you brought up your services." She reached into her briefcase and pulled out another document. She slid it in front of Megan. "Are you referring to this service contract you submitted to the bank to justify the transfers?" Megan stared at it. It was the contract she had faxed. "This one?" Jessica continued, tapping the paper. "The one that is completely blank with no list of deliverables. The one that is dated March 1st because the signature date next to your name is April 10th, which is 1 full week after the final payment was transferred. You signed a blank backdated contract to cover your theft. That is not a business dispute. That is evidence of wire fraud." Megan's face crumpled. She had just incriminated herself. The negotiation had collapsed. They were not here to repent. They were here to posture. I looked at Jessica. She met my gaze. I gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. Plan B. "All right," I said, leaning back in my chair. "It's clear we disagree on the core issue. Mom, you claim you had full authorization. I claim you used a forged POA. Let's settle that one point right now." I pulled out my phone. Karen's eyes narrowed. "What are you doing?" "Jessica has the bank's chief fraud investigator, Mr. Harrison, on standby. He's the one who analyzed your fake document. He's the one who has the file. We are going to call him on a 3-way recorded line. You can explain your authorization directly to him." Karen's confidence wavered. Just for a second, the latte cup stilled, but her arrogance was too deep. "Fine. I have nothing to hide. I had the paperwork. Make the call." Jessica dialed the number, her phone on the table's speaker system. "Mr. Harrison, thank you for making time. I have Miss Chloe Mitchell and Miss Karen Shaw on the line. The call is being recorded. Miss Shaw wishes to confirm the basis of her authorization for the $84,000 transfer." A man's voice, rough as gravel, filled the room. "Good afternoon, ladies. I have the file open. Miss Shaw, I've reviewed the documents you submitted. Can you confirm for me the basis of your authorization?" "Yes," Karen said, her voice full of authority. "I submitted the durable power of attorney, the one Chloe signed. I verified my identity. I answered all the security questions. I was fully authorized." "I see that," the investigator said. His tone was neutral. "And when you spoke to the telephone agent to execute the transfer, what was the final protocol you used to override the account freeze?" This was it. A precise procedural question. A trap. Karen, desperate to prove her intimate knowledge of the event, desperate to prove she belonged in that conversation, didn't hesitate. She scoffed. "I already went through this with your other agent. I used the medical override. I told them to reference the POA in the system, and I gave them the override code 77 Alpha. A deep, cold silence fell on the room. Robert looked confused. Megan looked terrified. Karen had just made a fatal mistake. 77 Alpha was not a bank code. It was not a procedure. It was a piece of nonsensical jargon she had invented on the spot during the original fraudulent call. Something she'd probably seen in a movie to sound official. It was noted in the agent's internal log. And only the person who made that call would know it. The investigator's voice came back, and all neutrality was gone. It was pure ice. "Thank you, Miss Shaw. That phrase, 77 Alpha, is the exact phrase you used in the original call, which was flagged for review. It is not a bank procedure. It is noted in this file as a deceptive verification tactic. You have just on a recorded line confirmed you were the individual who made that fraudulent call." Karen stopped breathing. The blood drained from her face, leaving her lipstick a grotesque painted red. She had just confessed to a federal investigator. "The bank's dispute is no longer pending, Mr. Harrison said. "We are marking this file as confirmed. Willful fraud. The dispute is closed. Thank you, Miss Cole. Goodbye." The line clicked dead. Karen stared at the phone. She looked at me. The arrogance, the smugness, the confidence, it was all gone. It had been replaced by a raw reptilian panic. "You!" she whispered, her voice trembling. You trapped me." "I gave you a platform to tell the truth," I said. "And you did." She lost control. The mask of the sophisticated mother, the martyr, the victim, it didn't just crack, it shattered into a million pieces. She launched herself to her feet, her chair screaming back and crashing onto the floor. "I deserve that money," she shrieked, her voice a raw, primal scream that echoed off the glass walls. "I deserved it every cent. You owe me. I am your mother. I am entitled to it." Jessica, who had been recording the entire meeting on a separate device, quietly hit save and named the file Confession. Robert was ashen, gripping the table. Megan was openly sobbing, her head in her hands. Karen grabbed her purse. She was hyperventilating, her eyes wild. "You'll get nothing back. Do you hear me? Nothing." She stormed out of the conference room, Robert and Megan scrambling to follow, a tidal wave of failure in her wake. Jessica and I sat in the profound silence. She calmly stacked the unsigned settlement agreements into a neat pile. "Well," Jessica said, her voice dry, "the bridge to a civil accommodation has just been thoroughly burned." I looked out the window. The negotiation was over. The war had just been declared, and Karen, in her rage, had just given me the weapon I needed to win it. The silence in my condo after kicking them out was a physical presence. It was the sound of air rushing into a vacuum. For 2 days, I existed in that new clean quiet. I had the locks changed. The $500 cost feeling like the best money I had ever spent. I reset my Wi-Fi, my router, and factory reset every single smart device in my home. The speakers, the thermostat, my television. I wiped them clean of any connection to my family's accounts. I was building a new digital fortress. Then on Monday morning, they launched their counterstrike. It wasn't a text, it wasn't a call, it was far more dangerous. An email appeared in my inbox at 9:05 a.m. The sender was Michael Evans, the head of internal compliance at Northline Arches. The subject line was, "Urgent internal review matter." My heart, which I thought had turned to stone, gave a painful human lurch. This was not family. This was my career. This was my life. "Dear Miss Mitchell," the email read, "an anonymous but detailed report has been made to the Compliance Department alleging a serious misappropriation of research funds specifically related to the Project Apex data servers. We require you to meet with us this morning at 10 a.m. to discuss this." They had missed my heart, so they were aiming for my spine. Megan, it had to be Megan. She was the only one who knew the name Project Apex from hearing me complain about it. She wouldn't understand what misappropriation of research funds meant, but she knew the words fraud and embezzlement would trigger an explosion. She was trying to get me fired. She was trying to burn my entire life to the ground. I didn't panic. I did exactly what I had done with the bank. I treated it as an audit for the next 45 minutes. I was not a victim. I was a data engineer preparing for a code review. I compiled everything. I pulled my server access logs for the last 6 months. I pulled my Git commit history for Project Apex. I pulled my corporate expense reports, every single one, and referenced them with the project's purchasing invoices for server time and software licenses. I assembled a complete time-stamped verifiable data trail of my entire professional life. At 10 a.m., I walked into Michael Evans's office. He was there with a woman from HR. They looked grim. "Chloe, thank you for coming in," Michael said, his voice flat. "We have received a serious allegation." "I know," I interrupted, my voice calm. I placed my laptop on his desk. "The allegation is a fabrication. It is part of a coordinated personal attack against me by a family member I am currently in a severe legal dispute with. I have brought my data." For the next 20 minutes, I walked them through it. "Here are the server access logs. You can see my IP and only my IP accessing the database. Here are my commit logs showing all code was pushed to the secure internal repository. And here," I said, opening the final spreadsheet, "are the expense reports. Every line item matches an invoice from our vendors. There is no misappropriated money. There is no slush fund. There is only the project budget, which I'm currently under by 3%. They were silent. They were trained to look for deception, for gaps, for nervous energy. I gave them nothing but cold, hard facts. Michael Evans watched me, then the data, and the grim look on his face slowly transformed into something else. "Our IT department," he said slowly, "was already tracing the anonymous email. It was sent from a masked IP, but the originating node traces back to a public library in Arvada, my parents' neighborhood. This," I said, sliding the laptop back into my bag, "is what I am dealing with." The follow-up was swift. By 3 p.m., the HR representative called me. "Chloe, the investigation is closed. It's clear the accusation was baseless and malicious. We are deeply sorry you had to go through this." "What about the sender?" I asked. "Our legal department is sending a formal cease and desist letter to the library's IP address, and based on the information you provided to the likely source. It warns that any further attempts to contact Northline Arches will be met with a harassment lawsuit." An hour later, my own boss, the VP of Engineering, called me into his office. "I heard what happened," he said, his face tight with anger. "That's appalling. I am so sorry." "It's handled," I said. "Good, because your professionalism under this kind of extreme duress is exactly why I've been meaning to talk to you. I'm moving you off Project Apex. It's done." My stomach dropped. "What?" "I'm giving you the new real-time data project," he said, a small smile playing on his lips. "It's the priority for the next 2 quarters. It's a team lead position, more responsibility, and a significant pay bump. You're the only one I trust not to crack under pressure. Congratulations." It was a promotion in the middle of the worst week of my life, in the face of their most vicious attack. I had not just survived, I had advanced. I went home. The condo was quiet, secure. But the attack on my job had rattled me. I felt the isolation, the weight of fighting my entire family alone. I called Mark. "Hey," I said, my voice sounding strained even to my own ears. "This is going to sound strange, but would you be willing to crash on my sofa for a few nights? I don't need protecting. I don't want to be alone in the house right now." He didn't hesitate. "I'll be over in 10. Want me to pick up Ty?" He stayed for 3 days. He brought his own pillow and a sleeping bag and slept on the sofa. We watched movies. We talked about fitness, about data, about anything other than my family. He was just a presence, a normal, stable, human presence. There were no kids involved, no messy emotional entanglements. It was just friendship, and it was exactly the ballast I needed. While I was securing my promotion, Karen was liquidating. My neighbor, the one who lived in the unit below me, mentioned it when we passed in the hall. "I saw your mother at that high-end consignment shop over in Cherry Creek," she said, her voice curious. She looked upset. She was carrying a bunch of clothes. I could have sworn I saw that beautiful cashmere coat she wore at the Christmas party. So, the money was running out. The Neiman Marcus coat. The trophy was being sold to pay for lattes, but she wasn't done fighting. My cousins were still texting me asking why I was being so cruel and kicking Megan out. The smear campaign was still active on Friday. Jessica called. I just received the final formal report from the bank's investigator. She said, her voice was back of business. The analysis of the forged power of attorney and the letter of authorization is complete and notarized. It's official. They are fraudulent. This is the last piece of the puzzle. The DA's office would take this case in a heartbeat. Good, I said. The new deadbolt felt cool under my hand. It's time to end this. What's the play? She asked. One last meeting, I said. Not a negotiation, a signing. They get one final binary choice. That night, I sat at my desk. I pulled up the settlement agreement Jessica had drafted, the 24-month repayment plan, the injunction. I printed 2 copies. Next to it, I pulled up the apology letter, the one that detailed in simple factual terms what they had done. I printed that too. These were the documents for my preferred outcome, the civil structured path. They were sitting on my desk waiting. Karen, Robert, and Megan thought this final battle would be about the fraudulent POA. They thought it was about Megan's confession, Karen's outburst at the lawyer's office. They thought they still had a chance to argue, to claim it was a misunderstanding. They had no idea I was still holding my ace. They had forgotten all about the second audio recording, the one from my kitchen where Karen and Megan in calm conspiratorial whispers had planned the next theft. The one where Karen explicitly said, "Next time, withdraw the remaining amount." That recording wasn't about the past. It wasn't about the $84,000. It was about intent. It was about the future. It was the one piece of evidence that proved beyond any doubt that this was not a mistake. It was a career, and I was about to fire them. The final meeting was not held at Jessica's firm. It was held in a neutral, sterile conference room on the 19th floor of the bank's downtown branch. It was a room devoid of personality. All beige walls and gray industrial carpet designed for uncomfortable conversations. Mr. Harrison, the chief fraud investigator, was already seated at the head of the table. He was a large man with a face that looked carved from granite. He did not stand when we entered. His file, thick and bound, sat in front of him. I sat on one side with Jessica. Robert, Karen, and Megan filed in and sat on the other. Robert looked like he had aged 10 years. Megan was a ghost. Her eyes were red, rimmed and hollow, and she stared at the table. Karen was the only one holding herself upright, but the mask was cracked. Her defiant energy was gone, replaced by a brittle, frantic tension. She was wearing a simple blouse, having sold the cashmere coat. Mr. Harrison did not wait. He opened the file. "We are here to finalize the bank's internal investigation. I will be brief." He slid a laminated report across the table. "Our forensic team's final conclusion is that the signature on the withdrawal authorization dated 4 months ago is a forgery. The stroke patterns, pressure, and hesitation marks are conclusive." He then slid a second document. "Furthermore, the durable power of attorney you submitted, Miss Shaw, is a fraudulent instrument. The notary seal is counterfeit. The commission number is invalid. This document is non-existent in the state of Colorado." He tapped the file. "The bank has confirmed unequivocally that these funds were removed under fraudulent pretenses. Our investigation is complete." The room was utterly silent. Robert's face was gray. Megan let out a tiny choked sob and covered her mouth. Karen looked from the report to Mr. Harrison, then to me. Her face was white, but she was not defeated. She was cornered, and that made her more dangerous. She turned to me, her eyes wide, pleading. She was playing her final card. "Chloe," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Please, you can't let him say these things. I am your mother. Everything I did, it was for this family. If it wasn't for me, you would be nothing. I sacrificed everything for you to have that fancy job, that fancy life. I held you when you were sick. I stayed up. I gave you everything. Don't I deserve something? Don't I deserve to be rewarded? I let the question hang in the air. The mother's sacrifice card. It was her last move. I looked at Jessica. I nodded once. She's right, I said, my voice cutting through the heavy silence. She does deserve to be heard. I'm glad you brought up your reward. Mom, you seem to have forgotten the details of how you decided on that reward. I have it here. I took my phone out. I pressed play. This was not the smart speaker recording of the OTP. This was the second recording. The one from the USB charger in my kitchen. The one they never knew existed. The room filled with her voice, low and conspiratorial, whispering to Megan. Karen's voice. He got the new account number from her desk. Good. Next time we don't do it in pieces. We take the rest. All of it. I skipped to the next track. A different conversation, this one with Robert, Karen's voice. I practiced the signature just like Megan showed me. It's fine. It's just Chloe. It's easy. It's just call it a reward for raising her. She owes us that much. That's my reward. I pressed stop. The silence in the room was no longer just heavy. It was a tomb. Robert Mitchell slumped. He didn't just sigh, he deflated. The sound was one of complete and total surrender. He put his head in his hands, his shoulders shaking. Oh God, he whispered. Karen, just stop. It's over. It's all over. He looked up at Jessica, his eyes defeated. We'll sign. Just, what do you need? We'll sign the papers. Megan was crying silently, tears streaming down her face, making no sound at all. Karen was rigid. She was staring at my phone. She had not cried. She had not broken. She was a pillar of pure, unadulterated rage. No, she whispered, her voice venomous. I will not. Mr. Harrison, who had listened to the entire recording without expression, now spoke. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. M. Shaw, he said. Let me be very clear. This is no longer a bank matter. This file, he tapped the thick folder, is a criminal referral. It contains evidence of felony forgery, conspiracy to commit wire fraud, and grand larceny if you do not sign this civil settlement agreement today, which Miss Cole has prepared as a final courtesy. My next call is to the Denver District Attorney's Office. This file will be on a prosecutor's desk by 3 p.m. You will not be a debtor. You will be a defendant. He let the words land. You will be arrested. The word arrested finally did what no evidence, no pleading, no confrontation had been able to do. It broke her. The room was dead silent for a full agonizing minute. The only sound was the far-off HVAC system. Karen's eyes darted from Mr. Harrison to me to the door. She was trapped. Her gaze fell to her own hands, clasped so tightly in her lap, her knuckles were white. She was clutching her purse, the one that matched the cashmere coat she had been forced to sell. She was clinging to the memory of the theft. Slowly, with a hand that trembled with rage, not fear, she reached across the table. She grabbed the pen. Where? She hissed. Jessica pushed the settlement and repayment agreement in front of her. Karen signed. Her signature was a violent, angry slash of ink. Jessica then pushed the formal letter of apology in front of her. Karen stared at it. I am not. Sign it, Mr. Harrison said. She signed. Jessica calmly collected the documents. This agreement is now binding, she said, as if concluding a real estate deal. You will repay the sum of $84,500 in 24 equal monthly installments. Any late or missed payment will activate the civil penalties, which are severe. This agreement also functions as a permanent injunction. You will not contact Chloe. You will not access her property, mail, or devices. You will not disparage her on social media or to any third party. If you do, this entire file goes to the DA. Do you understand? Robert nodded. His eyes closed. Megan just sobbed. Karen said nothing. Jessica stood. "We're done here, Mr. Harrison. Thank you for your time." The bank would now begin its own internal chargeback process for any funds it could reclaim, and the legal agreement would cover the rest. My family stood up. They were a broken, defeated unit. As they shuffled to the door, Karen paused. She looked at me one last time, her eyes promising a lifetime of hatred. I just looked back. "This is over," I said, my voice steady. "There is no more shared money. There is no more family fund. From now on, there are only boundaries. Do not contact me again." They left. Jessica and I walked to the elevator in silence. As the doors opened, my phone buzzed in my hand. It was an email from my VP at Northline Arches. Subject: Official offer. Team lead. Real-time data. The formal offer. The pay bump. The new title. My promotion was official. A new life was closing the door on the old one. That night, I returned to my condo. It was profoundly, beautifully quiet. I walked to my desk. I took the signed, notarized repayment agreement and the forced letter of apology, and I placed them in my new home safe. I closed the heavy steel door. I spun the dial. I looked at the smart speaker on my kitchen counter, the one that had started it all. I unplugged it. I wrapped the cord around it. I placed it in a box, deep in my closet. I would not need it anymore. I walked to the window. The lights of Denver were spread out below me. A map of a future that was for the first time entirely my own. My phone buzzed. A text from Mark. "How'd it go?" I smiled. I texted back. "The war is over. I won. You, me, and a bottle of champagne tonight. My treat." I had lost my family. I had lost over $100,000, at least for a while. But as I watched the city light up, I realized I had finally secured the one thing I'd been missing: peace of mind. It was the only interest I cared about, and it was the one thing I would never ever let anyone withdraw again. Thank you for listening to this story. If it touched you or resonated with you, please consider subscribing to the channel and sharing the video. It truly helps us grow and bring you more content. We would also love to hear your thoughts, so please drop a comment below and let us know where you're listening from.